One of my favorite things to do in the springtime when you're kind of in that pre-spawn mode still, just throw a crankbait on natural rock, kind of leading back into spawning areas. Today we're throwing a Luhr-Jensen Speed Trap. It's more of a square bill, but it's got a few more flat edges. It's got a flat underbelly and then two flat sides, almost like a triangular shape. Right now we've still got 54, 55 degree temps. Still a couple weeks out from the spawn. And what I'm looking for when I fish this bait is hard bottom areas that are leading back into a spawning pocket. We've got a little bit of current here, a little bit more depth. We've got 7 feet where we're at right now. And these fish will stage on these areas and feed before they move up and spawn. And a great way to target them is with a crankbait. You can cover a lot of water in the springtime, and that allows you to find active fish a lot faster than you would if you're sitting and dragging something or throwing a jig in an area like this. When they're staging, they're gonna find little pockets of slack water where the current is bringing food right next to them, and they're gonna feed up, you know, for a month or so when that water is kind of in the 45 to 55 degree range before they really get back in there and start spawning here in a couple weeks. So super effective technique in the springtime. You really can't beat it. It allows you to cover a bunch of water and be pretty effective when you're out in searching for some fish. I guess a couple of reasons that I like fishing these areas. Generally, when you're looking for like these deeper channel swings that swing up against a bank, or you can actually see the rock itself and your mapping is showing that there's some more depth there. The one reason those fish really prefer those areas in the springtime is they can move up shallow and feed, and then they can move off into a little bit deeper water very fast and easily. And in the springtime, you're constantly getting cold fronts. So you got warming trends, and then you got cold fronts, and then your warming trend, and then a cold front. And what those fish do is they'll slide up and they'll slide back, and they don't have to move very far when they do that if they've got access to deep water nearby. And the one way that I'm finding these areas is basically through my Lake Master mapping. You can really see those channel swings really defined on a lot of your reservoirs, and they're pretty easy to just take a look at your map, look at a creek, see where it swings up against the bank, and it's almost guaranteed there's going to be some hard rock and good depth in that area. And those are the areas I'm looking for. Here on the river, we've got the main river channel right here. There's a little bit of a ledge that comes up to this natural rock bank, and you can see that on the map. You know, there's deep water nearby out here on the main river channel, and that deep water it sticks with us all the way up until this creek, and those fish are going to use that deeper water with those little bit of ledges right next to it. You can see we got main river channel, good deep water trench right here, and then a little bit of a flat right up through here that they'll move up on and feed, and then if there's a cold front, they can move back down into this deeper trench. And I'll cursor kind of to where they're going. You can see it just continues to get flatter and flatter and flatter, and this is a dead-end cut here with slack water, and that's where they're going to be spawning, and we're targeting them out from that right now. So my Lake Master mapping is primarily how I find these areas from afar, and then once you get to them, you're kind of fine-tuning it by finding little back eddies and maybe a little depression in an area, certain things like that. But when you're at home and you're looking to do some scouting, I'd definitely start with that Lake Master mapping is kind of the main deal for me. There's one. So what we just did here, we got a smallie on and we're in current, so I just hit spot lock so we can fight this fish. We're not going to be drifting down the main river channel. It's keeping us right where we need to be, and it allows us to simply focus on landing this fish. So what we've got here is that main river channel is right outside of us, right out to our right. And right up here on our left, we've got this natural rock, a little bit of current, and you can see up in front of us, there's that log that sticks out and a little bit of a point, and that creates a current break. And that's exactly what this fish was sitting on there. A nice little river smallmouth. You can see he's feeding up there, getting ready to spawn here in a couple weeks. Get him back, let him do his thing. So when I'm cranking in the springtime, you got treble hook baits and baits that when these fish are fighting and they make a turn, they can get a lot of leverage against those hooks and allows them to throw the baits a little bit easier than your single hook bait. So I really prefer a glass rod. This is a medium heavy moderate action. It's a 6 foot 10-inch version. A little bit shorter than what you normally throw with the crankbait, but the reason I'm doing it is if you look down this bank, we got a lot of small little targets and we're not real far off the bank, so we're not having to make like a long bomb cast or anything like that. But even like a tree like this that we have in the water, you know, it allows me to make a short underhand cast and be super accurate. You know, there's a little eddy sitting behind there, and those are the areas that we're targeting along this bank. And by having a shorter rod, it allows me to just make a little bit more accurate roll casts along here. You know, if you're out fishing ledges or open water, you know, you might want a little bit longer rod for a longer cast, but when I'm in close quarters like this, I really prefer a rod that's under 7 feet to be a lot more accurate with my casts. And that moderate action and the glass that's used to create this rod really allows for a lot more flex than your standard graphite rod. And what that does is when those fish initially eat the bait, it allows them to get the bait a little bit better, and it also helps you when you're fighting those fish. So when they're gonna make a surge at the boat, which today are fishing smallmouth and they do so much right at the boat, is just make endless amounts of runs, it's gonna allow you to better chance of keeping those fish pegged, which is super key when you're fishing crankbait, especially in current and especially with smallmouth. It's gonna up your odds of landing those fish. And I'm using, this is 12-pound test, it's fluorocarbon, so it's got a little bit of give. I do like fluorocarbon when I'm cranking though. It allows me to feel a little bit more of what's going on down there, whether I'm bumping into rock or a lot of times you're gonna pick up leaves on a cast. It allows me to tell if I've got a leaf on there, I can just give it a quick little snap and get rid of it. So that fluorocarbon allows it to be a little bit more sensitive even though you're using a rod that's got some give to it. We're in like 4, 5, 6 feet of water, and I'm just kind of straight reeling this, and you can kind of see it'll deflect off a rock every so often, and that's kind of what I'm doing to try and trigger these bites. We've got a little bit of flow right here, and so what those fish are doing is, at least what I think they're doing, is sitting behind some of these rocks and just waiting for food to come right over their head, and they're jumping out and grabbing it. And so if you can get down in those rocks and deflect it, that's generally what's triggering this bite. And one thing that I've noticed with this speed trap is when you hit a rock, it really deflects. It doesn't just kind of crawl over it, it really shoots off to one side or another. I don't know if that helps to trigger some bites. It might. Kind of that hunting action a little bit that's generated by it deflecting off of a rock. So when I'm selecting color for spring cranking, I'm looking at a couple different things. The biggest thing really is water clarity for me. Right now we've got a little bit of dinge to the color of this water, so I'm throwing a little bit brighter bait. This is a chartreuse and has a little bit of orange on the belly. Now you could probably also throw like a little bit more of a craw color, like orange or red in this color, and do just fine. So you definitely want more of your brighter, your shot colors when you've got some color in the water itself. A little mud, maybe a little tea stain to it, or maybe that Tennessee River kind of greenish blue tint to it. I feel like those brighter colors really excel If you're on a body of water that has real clear water, maybe a natural lake in the springtime, there are days where these bright colors will work, but there's also times where you want more of a natural, kind of a minnow or a bluegill type of color that you're throwing. So that's really how I select my colors. Is it pretty much comes down to water clarity. On a natural lake, if you've got maybe cloudy conditions or windy conditions, you could get away with some of these brighter colors, but otherwise I'm usually selecting more of a natural base on those clear water lakes.